buyer beware, why I don't use Airbnb or VRBO anymore. Guys, please be careful. These companies are out there to get you. I'm going to explain to you why I think that these companies are absolutely terrible, what happened to me, and ways that you can avoid booking through Airbnb and VRBO and still be able to rent a house or a condo in the future. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Evan, and this is Sensor Sense. And today, I want to let you know why I despise Airbnb and VRBO so much. Well, go back about 5 years ago, and I started renting with Airbnb, and I had pretty good experience for a while. And then enter COVID, and they had some policies in place where if you had a COVID test and you had rented an Airbnb, that you could provide proof of a COVID test, and they would provide you a refund of your deposit for or your full payment for the Airbnb if it occurred within a certain period of time, but when you were supposed to leave on your trip. And this was 2021. My wife and I had scheduled a trip to up into Wyoming. We were going to drive all the way from Dallas. We were going to stop along the way and visit some friends and make basically a week-long trip out of it. And in the middle of the summer of 2021, both my wife and my son got COVID right before we were going to leave on this trip. We home tested. We sent my wife to the doctor to get an actual physical nasal swab test and an actual result that was on company letterhead, a doctor's letterhead, so that we could submit this information to Airbnb. And we did so right away. And we were within 72 hours of leaving, and that was what the term said, that if you were within 72 hours, that Airbnb would take care of the situation with the proof, and they would get you your refund. Well, that is the furthest from the truth on any company I've ever dealt with. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, we made no less than 6 attempts to try to call, text, chat, email, discuss this with supervisors, send in any information via a scanned copy, email, pictures. We provided them so many different data points and so many ways to say that we were sick with COVID that there was no way that they could have denied it. Yet somehow we kept being hung up on. We kept being told the supervisor wasn't available to handle the situation. We told we'd be called back or emailed back. Never happened. We were told that give us 24 hours to process this and we'll get a refund in your account. Never happened. Escalated that multiple supervisors over multiple days. Mind you, this was right before we were supposed to leave on the trip, and the poor host of the Airbnb was frantic trying to find someone else to rent the place because she was depending on the other 50% that we were going to pay her upon arrival, essentially to cover some of her expenses. And we had already told her that we weren't coming. And she said if she could rent it out for full price, that she would give us a full refund in her defense. That was wonderful that she offered that. I said, no, I don't think you should be giving us a full refund. I think this is Airbnb's policy, not your policy. And furthermore, let's just, fast forward a couple weeks. So we didn't obviously go on this trip. We never collected any money from Airbnb. The host graciously offered to give us half the deposit back, which I felt was fair for both of us. She did find someone to rent for a couple days of the 5, I think, that we were going to stay there. So I felt like it was a pretty good deal for all of us. And I ended up having to dispute this charge with Capital One because Airbnb was not following their own policies and their terms and conditions. And I sent all this information to Capital One. I explained the whole circumstances to them. I sent them screenshots. I must have emailed and uploaded at least 30 documents to them. And over the next 3 months, Capital One kept getting responses back from Airbnb saying that Airbnb was telling them that we, in fact, not only went to Wyoming, but we checked in. We used the keypad to check in at this individual's hosted Airbnb, and that they had proof that we were there. Yet I had sent, probably 15 receipts, including restaurant receipts, pharmacy receipts, gas bills, things like this, showing that we were in Texas the entire time. And furthermore, I said, what do you want me to do? You want me to take my car in and have you guys connect it and look at the GPS and figure out that we had not driven to Wyoming? And of course, it just got stonewalled. Airbnb wasn't going to do anything. And needless to say, after multiple attempts to try to work with Airbnb and Capital One on this dispute, Capital One sided with Airbnb after all that. So guess what? I was out of all the money. There was nothing I could do about it. Like I said, the host was gracious enough to give us back 50% of the deposit. So I feel like we walked away with a pretty good, decent amount of money. But guys, understand, the corporations are typically going to side with other corporations. So Capital One sided with Airbnb, even though they had bogus excuses for that. So that's the main reason why I will never use Airbnb again. And I mean, I will never even use them again. I might use the website to find other locations or places to stay that through a third party, but I'm never going to use it to book an actual stay. Let's go into VRBO. VRBO, it has been better to us over the last couple years. In fact, I rented my last VRBO just a couple months ago with some friends here in Texas. And I didn't really have any issues with them, but then, they got bought out by Expedia a while back, and their customer support started to go downhill over time. They started issuing what they call one key cash, which is like 3%, 2 or 3% cash back on every stay, and that was deposited in your account, and it had an expiration on it. You're supposed to be able to use it on any VRBO stays in the future as kind of an incentive to come back and use their platform again. However, I tried to book multiple times for this trip with our friends just recently. I could not get any VRBO in the area that we wanted to stay to accept the one key cash. No one was going to take it, and it was like about $100. It wasn't a small amount of money, and VRBO was just like, oh, sorry, we can't guarantee that every VRBO is going to take it. And I said, well, I tried it with like 4 different ones, and they wouldn't take it. And they said, oh, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it. And oh, by the way, it expires at the end of December, so you're not going to be able to use it. It's just going to expire. Well, isn't that convenient? So the cashback's kind of a gimmick. And then the other thing that really bothers me about VRBO is they allow hosts to rate you as the guest. So when you stay at a hosted VRBO, the host has the ability to rate you as a customer of their property, which is totally fair. I get that. Like, we rate them, they rate us. It should be a transparent system in which future hosts can look at that and say, I don't want to rent to that person, or and then future customers can say, I don't want to go and rent from that host. But the problem is, all of the ratings for guests are online, and you can look at them through the VRBO website. All of the host ratings of the actual guests staying at their hosted VRBO are not online, and they are not accessible. I found this out when I was told that I had a rating from the host that we stayed with in Central Texas, and I was told that, sorry, you don't have access to that information. And I said, well, that's unacceptable. If I rated them, I should be able to see what they rated me. And they told me, oh, sorry, there's a system glitch, there's a problem. And so I was like, I said, well, I want a supervisor to reach back out and provide this information. I'll wait a few days for that information. Well, nevertheless, 8 days later, I got a scripted response that said, oh, here's your review, 5 stars. And it didn't even explain, it didn't show the host name, it didn't show my name. It looked very generic, very suspicious. There was nothing to identify it as being my stay. I thought it was kind of a script to try to get people off their back. And then furthermore, it said, we're trying to expand our abilities to provide this information to our customers in the future, but as of right now, it's not available. And I thought to myself, isn't that convenient that they're going to allow this system to be, quote, down or be problematic or not available? And it's just not fair. You cannot, what if you went and stayed somewhere and the host decided they didn't like you? And this actually happened to my wife several years back with a private rental, where the host just said, get out, I don't like you, because the place was a filthy pigsty, and my wife complained about it, and he said, if you don't like it, you can leave, and then didn't offer a refund. So, what's to happen if you go and stay at a place and you follow all the house rules, and then all of a sudden you find out that the host decided to give you a poor rating for whatever reason, and now you go on another trip and you want to stay in a VRBO and you need to book it last minute, and the host says, sorry, I'm not willing to rent it to you. You've had some poor reviews. And if you think that won't happen to you, I had a buddy that actually went through the process of renting a VRBO, was about 2 or 3 days to leave on an international trip, and found out that the host had sent him an email that went to his spam about a week before that said, sorry, I'm going to pull the plug on this reservation because of this bad review that you had at a previous location. No explanation given. It had already been canceled. There was nothing he could do about it. He reached out to VRBO support. They said, sorry, that's due to your internal review of the host reviewing you in a previous property, but we're not going to give you that information. So guys, be extremely careful with these companies. I will not rent with them again. They just are not transparent. They're not open. They'll say whatever they need to say to get you to rent. And then when you have problems, there's no customer support at all. And that goes for even when you're staying there. You stay there and you try to get support, they're just not going to give it to you. So there is a way that you can kind of work around this. The way that I do this now is I go to Airbnb and I go to VRBO and I try to find the description of the actual rentals. And then I take those and I copy and paste them into Google search. And that is the way that I try to find those particular rentals available through, directly through the owner or directly through a private company that manages those properties. And you can do that and effectively get a lower cost on your Airbnb or VRBO equivalent stay because they're not having to pay VRBO or Airbnb any kind of service fee or listing fee. And so this works probably about 75% of the time. If I can't seem to find that particular location I'm wanting to stay at, through Google, then I will move on and find somewhere else that I can stay. I'm just not going to deal with VRBO or Airbnb anymore. Beware out there, guys. I hope this video helped you. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate the support, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for tuning in.